I'm John Michelson. I'm the Chief Product Officer with Imperium. Imperium focuses on mobile threat defense. We've studied for years how the increasingly mobile and connected world is providing greater and greater opportunity for new applications and productivity, but is also exposing us to hacking and inappropriate use of mobility that causes problems. So we've got to obviously marry the great capability that we have in mobile with the threat defense that we need for mobile. And in fact, in this webinar, we're going to do some disclosure on a so-called secure messaging app called Telegram that we find is not quite as secure as we would like it to be. And as good citizens, we need to make this disclosure so that people have the full knowledge of whether or not Telegram is really secure. But in doing that, what I'd really like to do is just use that as an example and put in context the whole threat landscape that faces us as mobile users and as companies that are leveraging mobility. So we assert that enterprises are most vulnerable in mobile. If you think about it, all of these smartphones, all of these tablets, all of the new applications being built by companies in the mobile context for their users are creating a fantastic increase in productivity, but are also increasing the opportunity for us to expose our corporate systems, our corporate data, and even our personal information in ways that we haven't in the past. And when we think about it, it's like the perimeter of the business has now expanded in this vast way, and that every one of these mobile devices is a hole in that perimeter if we don't have really good security to close that vulnerability. And it's not just the big brand names that we know from the news, whether it was a Sony or a Target or others, where these hacks are occurring. It's a constant thing. Every 24 hours, you can scan news of a different company or a different attempt at hacking that was successful, or another government agency. And it's not just the big brand names, it's small companies, it's even individuals where this threat is very real and it's occurring. And let me just, as a way to really kind of show you just how vulnerable these devices and the risk associated really is, just look in the lower right-hand corner of the screen with me. Most of us are on LinkedIn. If not us, our admins, some other folks within our organization on LinkedIn. And how often do you think our LinkedIn password is the same exact password or very close to the same password we use to log into our corporate exchange system or through our corporate firewalls or our corporate VPN? We would all, if we had to admit, we either do it ourselves or someone we know does it, and yet it's so vulnerable on a mobile device to be able to capture a LinkedIn password and then use that password from either the same device or a different device in order to get into those corporate systems. So we could go through countless examples of how exposed we are in the mobile world and how we really need to address this head on. And so that's who Imperium is. So Imperium is all about finding the ways to secure this mobile landscape in a way that is unobtrusive, designed and built for mobile, and leading edge. We were founded years ago, headquarters in San Francisco, R&D and security center are in Tel Aviv. And we have fantastic security research specialists and R&D specialists who are delivering the product to market that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Now, what we're going to talk specifically about today is that one of our founders, Zook, has done some work with the Telegram application. But before I actually go through that disclosure, what I'd really like to do is talk about the whole landscape when it comes to mobility and the way that we have to think about securing this new mobile landscape. So there are two primary ways to compromise a device. You can compromise it on the host or through the network. When we speak about compromising the host, we're talking about getting a malicious application onto the device itself. And the closest analogy here is the old antivirus type of approach we used to talk about in desktops, an approach that, by the way, does not work very well at all in mobile. But still, host-based attacks, code that's running on your mobile device that is doing things that you don't want it to do, you may not even know it. The app may be an app that you think is just fine, but in fact does malicious activity. Or the application could have installed itself. You don't even know it's there, and yet it's doing this bad stuff. It's real easy to get them. It can be delivered over a network attack, or it could have just been an accidental click on a link in an email or an SMS message, or it could have been sent to you by someone else or surfing from your mobile web browser. Either way, host attacks, very significant aspect that we have to cover. And in fact, the Telegram application, very susceptible to host attacks, and we're going to disclose that in just a minute. Network attacks, the other way you can be exposed through mobile. You know, unfortunately, the protocols that operate both the cell and data aspects of your mobile device were invented so long ago that security was really not top of mind. And in fact, obscurity was the security back then. Those folks writing those protocols thought, well, so few people will ever see this, will ever know this, will ever get access to a device that implements this protocol. We don't have to worry about it. And ease of use and ease of implementation became more important than security. Well, that now leads us to a very difficult situation where the protocols that we use to communicate are inherently vulnerable to certain types of network attacks. Now, once we compromise a device, what happens? Well, unfortunately, it's not as simple as we know it. The device may be hacked and we don't know it. The device could be giving access to corporate systems or your cloud-based services, other people's information, all kinds of things, and you don't even know it. Or information is stolen from that device, and then of course that information is leveraged to get access to those other corporate systems or other people, and you don't even need the compromised device anymore. But either way, whether it's host-based attacks or network attacks, it's quite possible, and in fact, unfortunately, it's entirely too easy for us to get compromised, for our devices to be compromised, and for these kinds of attacks to be carried out. So let's talk for a minute about an example network attack, And let's just set up a simple example. If I'm at the hotel, and my goal is to access the internet via the hotel's Wi-Fi network, I do this all the time as I travel. I bet most of you end up on public Wi-Fi networks all the time, whether it's as I'm giving here in this example with the hotel, it could easily be the coffee shop, it could be the library, or it could be any number of places. We believe that this should be secure. In fact, I'm often making sure that there's an SSL type connection between my device and the internet, and I should presume I could be safe in this condition, but in fact I can't, because it's very possible instead for a hacker to become what we call a man in the middle, and in fact take over my connection to the internet, get in between me and that hotel Wi-Fi, and then see every packet of information that flows between my mobile device and the internet and back. And in many, many cases, as I mentioned a minute ago in the LinkedIn example, steal my passwords, know exactly where I've gone on the web, be able to read my inbox, be able to compromise my device by injecting applications, malicious applications. Now we're talking about the host stuff, via the network attack, and I just exposed and compromised my device. So here's an example of a network attack, and it's very common. It's entirely easier than you thought it would ever be to be able to do this kind of attack on a mobile device. Now, an example of a host attack, it turns out, is our disclosure on Telegram. And let me start by saying Telegram are not inherently bad people, and I bet they did not intentionally try to create a system where they made claims of security, but in fact it has glaring vulnerabilities. I bet their heart's in the right place and they're trying to do the right thing. And so are we. We followed all of the common practice around doing our research in a lab, not on live devices, and then disclosing directly to Telegram, not to the public, and giving them the required amount of time to respond to us to make sure that they were going to take proper steps. And the fact that they did not within a reasonable time frame, the onus becomes ours to then disclose to the rest of the community who might presume that they're safe when using Telegram, that in fact there are vulnerabilities in Telegram. So what are those vulnerabilities? Let's get to that. But first, let's establish those claims. So Telegram's primary purpose is to give you the sense of security versus your SMS messages or iMessage or WhatsApp or other applications that are presumably less secure. And they do this by promising you that, for example, Telegram keeps your messages safe from hacker attacks, or that it encrypts your personal and business secrets, that you can destruct your messages and that they will go away. You'll never be able to fetch them back. If you destroy a message, it's gone forever. And that, of course, it's incredibly private. So you can share very sensitive information. You could be a whistleblower sending messages to a newspaper. You could be, think of it, right? Any of these things. And this is exactly what Telegram is supposed to be enabling. And we're supposed to feel safe using Telegram as a messaging system in these use cases. But the problem is that while it is true that Telegram encrypts the data that is in motion, Telegram does not properly encrypt the data that is at rest. And the challenge is that host-based hacking, very well known, very well understood approaches to hacking a device expose the content of your so-called secret messages to hackers. So while the screen on the left, we presume, is completely hack-proof because of the claims made by Telegram, in fact, the middle screen is a view of the process memory of the Telegram application. Well-known, well-understood hacks, exploits on Android, in this particular example, are able to go and expose the content of those secret chats of the application as it's running in memory, which of course means that any hacker who's done this for a little while would be able to leverage these well-known, well-understood hacks and be able to compromise your messages by being able to view the memory of the Android device while the Telegram app is running. Well, what about when the Telegram app quits? What if I delete the messages and I quit the Telegram app? Am I safe then? Well, unfortunately not, because it turns out that there's a file on the file system of your Android device. Again, in this particular case, we studied the Android version of Telegram. The file that holds those messages itself is not encrypted either. So the right-hand screen shows us that the supposedly safe encrypted messages, the private information that you wanted to send back and forth, is encrypted, but only when it's being sent from one device to another, not when it is being stored on your personal device. And as I mentioned, well-known, well-understood hack exploits can take advantage of the fact that the file is sitting on the Android device and can be read, and those text messages are not encrypted. This is even the case of deleted messages. It turns out, for some period of time, it's probably indeterminate, but for some period of time, even messages that are marked as deleted and you will no longer see in the Telegram application, they are still visible on the file on the Android device for some period of time. Probably until you create a bunch of more messages, by the way. These are, in our view, significant vulnerabilities in the Telegram application if its claims are that it is private, that it is encrypted, and that it prevents hackers from being able to see your messages. Because in fact, we used well-known hack exploits and we were able to do just that. Now, if you want more, you can certainly ask questions toward the end of our webinar here. But if you'd like more, including what I think would be very educational for you, especially if you're not a hacker, would be to walk through the process that Zook went through to actually take apart the Telegram app and to identify and try to exploit it. And you'll actually see how he took a very systematic approach to seeing how he could find vulnerabilities in the application. It's exactly the way a hacker would look at your corporate application. It's exactly the way a hacker would look at your corporate access. And this provides you, I think, with a really good template for how hackers really walk through identifying and leveraging exploits. And so I think it's educational even outside of the context of Telegram. And again, Telegram's being disclosed because we need the world to know Telegram is not as safe as it is being advertised. but it's really just yet another example of the host vulnerability of mobile devices. And in fact, many folks think, well, I'm protected from network and host type attacks because I've installed a so-called secure MDM system. And while I will in a minute tell you all kinds of great things that MDM systems do, mobile device management, by the way, systems do to help secure you, they do not secure you from hackers. So just as an example here, it's very possible that the so-called secure side can be compromised from the insecure side of the mobile device. Keyloggers, screen grabbers, malicious applications that can go through the so-called secure containers. They get access to the VPN connections that are created on the secure side of the phone. The secure browsers inside these these MDM systems still have lots of vulnerabilities. And just as a general statement, because by the way, we're not trying to say that MDM is inherently unsafe. We think there's lots of great security capabilities in the MDM world, but from the hacking side, we haven't brought every MDM system that we brought into our security lab, we have been able to exploit the same way we just did Telegram, the same way we just showed you a network-style attack. So it's important to realize that MDM itself does not stop this. And in fact, when you think about how to really put the security in context, what do I need to do from a complete security point of view? It really does come down to mobile device management and a solution like ours at Imperium. Because your MDM solution, AirWatch, Citrix, Mobile Iron, and many others, solve the Dropbox problem. That's the way a lot of our customers describe it, where to summarize, they're trying to prevent corporate users of mobile devices from doing inappropriate things with their mobile devices. And that makes sense. And in that regard, they do access controls, they do requiring VPNs, they don't let jailbroken or rooted devices on the corporate network, they quarantine devices that don't follow the corporate governance policies, and all kinds of very appropriate, yes, securing kinds of activities, and that's great. But there's the other whole side of the equation. We at Imperium are not trying to prevent corporate users from inappropriate use of their phones. We're trying to keep hackers from doing inappropriate use of those phones. That's the spear phishing, the malicious apps, target discovery, man-in-the-middle network attacks, rogue cell towers and access points, and all of these other kinds of things. Your traditional corporate user is not trying to hack his or her own phone. The problem is that once it leaves the corporate network, it is vulnerable to those people, and we have to protect from those kinds of targets as well, and those vectors as well. So this is not an either-or solution. This is an and solution. Secure the access and controls from the MDM product. Secure yourself from malicious activity with Imperium. And finally, let's get into what our solution actually does. Because in fact, securing devices is not a new idea, right? Firewalls and email gateways and antivirus, all of these kinds of things have existed. But the reality is that securing mobile devices requires designing specifically for mobile. And in order for me to summarize what would be a whole long dialogue about what makes us interesting and different, let me give it to you in just a few different ways. We cannot expect that we already know every problem, every potential hack. Zero-day or unknown threats are a big part of the way that hacking is going on these days. In fact, the well-known exploits we used on Telegram are obviously easy for us to look for. It's the unknown threats that are actually even more of a challenge. We have to work whether the device is even connected to a network or not, because malicious applications can detonate their hack, even if you're not on the corporate network at the time, or even on a public Wi-Fi at the time. It's got to deal with the realities of being on a mobile device. It's got to deal with the constrained battery, the constrained network bandwidth. The privacy aspects are critical. Some are trying to protect their mobile devices of their users by VPN connecting every single packet of traffic. Well, the problem is that when I'm sitting at my corporate desktop, I know that all my email and all my web traffic is going through the corporate firewalls and all that, and that makes sense. But with my personal device, on my personal time, for all of that traffic to be going through a corporate firewall is a privacy issue for many people. And yet it has to be non-intrusive. You can't require jailbreaking or rooted access to the device. And of course, it's got to have all of the enterprise finish out capabilities that make it manageable. It's got to connect to the MDM systems. It's got to leverage and connect into the security team's incident response systems. And it has to be massively scalable to handle the kinds of organizations that are going to need us to protect their entire mobile landscape. So specifically designed for mobile is very, very important. The antivirus crowd is trying to do essentially the known host kind of defects, or excuse me, attacks, and that's not enough coverage. The network-based guys are trying to VPN connect all of the devices, and they really don't have a sense for how to do this properly on the mobile device, especially while disconnected. We've designed specifically for mobile to solve for the whole problem. And so here is this Imperium solution. 3 main parts. On the left-hand side, you see ZIPS. ZIPS is the on-device protection. It is behavioral analysis. It is real-time observing the characteristics of the device so that when the characteristics of the device imply a hack attempt is going on, it detects that right then and alerts you, and alerts the Z console, which is on the right-hand side, to take action. But let's stick with ZIPS for a minute. It runs on your device, very lightweight, low battery drain, and does not send packets of information as you're using your applications and you're surfing and browsing and reading emails and all of the things we love to do on our mobile devices. None of that information is required for us to do detection. We detect by observing the characteristics of the device itself. We don't have to see your packets. We don't have to hook into all of your system calls and see all your applications running and see all the things you type on your phone. We can do this through a machine learning mechanism that allows us to be extremely sensitive with regard to privacy, and yet very significantly detecting all of these types of both host and network type attacks. On the right-hand side, I mentioned Z console. When some security event does occur, we collect information from the device and we send it to the Z console, because we do need to take action in many cases. When your device is under attack, we may need to connect to your MDM system to turn off your network connection, or to quarantine your device, at the very least to inform you and to inform your network administrators that your device has been compromised in some way. So our console allows for us to collect that information so that we and the security team at our customers can do the forensic analysis necessary to see what's going on. Are you under a specific attack, or is this an umbrella attack? And all of the kinds of things that we need to know as good security professionals. And on that note, good security professionals need good penetration testing tools. We need to be able to, in a lab, in a simulated environment, we need to be able to use a product like Zanti that'll allow us to attack these mobile devices, again, not in the wild, but in a lab, to ensure that we've actually protected ourselves, or to make sure that if we have exposure, that we discover those exposures, not hackers. So Zanti is a product that helps with the penetration testing, and generally the mobile team and the security team at our customers use Zanti to do that kind of work. The typical corporate mobile phone user is not a user of Zanti, but the security team and the mobile team often are. So these are the 3 components of our solution. ZIPS runs on your device. The Z console is the server-based dashboard, and it allows us to connect into the security system and the mobile device management systems at our customers. And Zanti is the tool that helps us confirm that we've actually protected the mobile device network, and it exposes vulnerabilities when we haven't. So that's the complete solution. Let's hit one quick case study, and then I'm ready for questions, Scott. So one of the large global telcos senses, the telcos have been early in this because they've seen these hacking statistics going up even before many other customers did. So we have as one of our customers one of those global telcos, and their challenge was they were seeing that they were under attack, but the MDM system was only doing certain parts, not the whole thing. We talked about that, right? They knew their MDM would be good at helping them secure access to their email and VPN connecting certain of their mobile apps, etc. But what about the hacking vector? What about compromising the network itself when they're not on their corporate network? What about rogue applications ending up on the user's devices, and even unbeknownst to those users, and doing things that would be malicious in nature? So that's when they knew they needed a solution like Imperium. So we provided them exactly what we just described: on-device behavioral detection of hack attempts that targeted, even within the first 60 days, several hacks we were identifying that were, until that point, going unnoticed. And just an interesting little sideline, some of the executives at this particular team flew on a trip to a different location and found that as soon as they landed at that corporate retreat location, that there was a rogue access point at that location. And that rogue access point would have had the ability to do not only network-based attacks, but inject host attacks into that device. And think about it. If you were the hacker, you wouldn't necessarily have to do all of your damage while they're at the corporate offsite. You just have to get your hack onto those devices. Then, when those users go back to their corporate network, they literally walk right through the perimeter of all the network firewalling software, and they get free access to the entire corporate network. So that's the kind of vulnerability that we were able to close for this particular telco. And of course, seamless integration with their existing MDM and SIM systems. So that's hopefully a sense of, in summary, the threat landscape is vast. Certainly includes host-based attacks, like the Telegram application disclosure we've made, and network-based attacks. As an example, the man in the middle that I described with the hotel Wi-Fi. The MDM systems are not themselves a complete security solution. It takes user and access control security from MDM and hacker security, hack vectors security through a product like Imperium to really give you that complete security. And of course, I introduced you to how we provide that in a unique way, on-device, behavioral-based detection. Privacy is a key ingredient in our solution. We are not compromising user privacy by doing the detection of hacking, and of course, doing all of the enterprise-friendly things like hooking into the MDM system, hooking into the security event management system, so that it's operational for our customers. And so that summarizes the Imperium solution. At this point, Scott, do you want to open up for questions?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. We've had a couple of questions come in. If you do have a question, go ahead and type it into the right-hand side of your viewing window, and we will get to those as soon as we can. We got a couple coming in. John, one question was about the MDM vendors where you had the slide cut in half.
Sure.
What did the MDM guys say about this type of solution?
So, of course, we shouldn't try to characterize every MDM in one simple statement, but we are partnering with the MDM providers. In fact, the MDM providers see us as a great complement to what they are doing. And of course, I think you've heard from me, we see them as a great complement as well. So we are in a symbiotic relationship with the MDM vendors that we've been working with so far, and in fact, we've been recommended. We're going to be, for example, we are with Samsung and with AirWatch at Mobile World Congress next week. We're in the booth with AirWatch because AirWatch is certainly partnering with us, as others are, and they're happy to recommend that if you have the need for protecting from hacking, we would recommend a solution like Imperium.
Okay. Here's another question. So we didn't really cover this, but how would you look at this technology working on a platform versus the devices? So maybe elaborate. How do I use this on my platform, and how do I cover everybody?
Yeah. So the good news is that the on-device protection is really what's key to our solution. So if you have a huge platform or community of users, and you're trying to provide a measure of protection for that entire community, the simple answer is they all just need to be running zips. Running zips on their devices provides that all the time, always on detection of potentially damaging hacking attempts, and the notification of those into a central dashboard that we can scale into the millions without any trouble at all. We know, and we're looking forward to, obviously you can imagine as a company, we're looking forward to when the entire mobile community really does recognize the vulnerability that is inherent in these devices. In fact, I'll give you just one quick example. This wasn't a specific question, but I'll just throw it out there. The same way that the network protocols themselves are inherently vulnerable to hacking, the mobile device manufacturers have created a system where the mobile devices automatically connect to public Wi-Fi's. And that itself is also the single most vulnerable, what would you say, vulnerability encouraging action that a mobile device could take, because you don't even have to ask it to connect to AT&T Wi-Fi or Starbucks or whatever it is, and it doesn't use any kind of certificate. It's literally just by name. So a hacker just names their rogue access point, something you've already connected to, and you will auto-connect to it. So every member of that community needs to be running zips, which gives them the detection. Our dashboard will show and help you remediate when that community is under attack.
Okay, thanks, John. Thanks, John. So we got time for one more question. If we don't get to your question, you can go ahead and send an email into sales@Imperium, and we'll get John to answer your question. Or you can tweet to him at John Michelson if you're on Twitter. But this is our last question, John. So how does the protection really work on an iPhone? Does the iPhone have to be jailbroken? Because earlier you said jailbroken devices aren't allowed on the corporate network via MDM. So talk about root access.
Sure. So unfortunately, iOS is vulnerable, if not every bit as much as Android, nearly every bit as much as Android. And first, I would say that, remember, we're talking mostly about two different main areas of concern, right? Host and network. So let's start with network. Both Android and iOS are equally vulnerable at the network level because they're implementing the same protocols in the same way. They have the exact same vulnerability. So don't have an unreasonable expectation of security when you're not running something like zips and you are connecting to networks that you can't necessarily trust. And by the way, if the device next to you on the same so-called safe network is compromised, then you are compromised. You can't even really trust your own networks. So now, as to host attacks, it is true that iOS provides higher separation of one application from another, which is great. Unfortunately, though, we could put up a list of 20 vulnerabilities in iOS in host, whether it's USB connection or it's rogue applications, rogue MDM profiles, rogue VPN profiles, malicious application behavior. We read just recently that there was an iPhone battery manufacturer that was embedding malicious firmware into the battery. So people are completely unaware of the fact that the battery they're replacing, they send you a little kit where you can pop open your iPhone, you can replace the battery and close the device back up, and you would never in a million years expect that you've just basically installed for them malicious software directly onto your iPhone, but in fact that is the case. So the host-based attacks, and let me then summarize it this way. That's why detection is so important. We can't presume, we are pre-aware of every possible way that you can be hacked and create some mechanism to stop that from happening, right? We can't presume we're going to always know, oh wait, what if they install firmware on batteries and they create and they start selling batteries in the third-party market? We better make sure that we stop people from installing batteries and we check them there's just no way. So instead, on device, always running detection of the characteristics of malicious hacking is the only way that we've discovered that can solve for this kind of thing. So no matter what of the ways that you were hacked I just described, Zips is able to discover them.
Thanks, John. Well, that concludes today's webinar, everybody. We will send out the slides, and we'll send you some links if you signed up for the webinar, and archive information so you can send to colleagues and push it out. Thanks, John, for your time, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.